Hey everyone, Wayne here. Today we're going to take a quick look at First Strike, the Cuxhaven Raid, Christmas Day, 1914. This is the second solitaire game that I'm looking at, and also the second solitaire game, one of two, that's in LPS's Against the Odds 2018 annual Sea Monsters. Now remember, it says 2018, that actually was just published, and I was just talking to the publisher, and I see that they, I think, have finished shipping all the copies for those subscribers. So the game should be available to everybody who wants to buy it now. I know there's a little bit of a holdup with their mailing service, but it should be heading out to everybody. So I've already looked at, and you guys can kind of see it comes with 4 games. The two on the right here are more of the single, or it's not single player, more of the multiplayer variety or 2-player variety. I think Iron and Fire can be soloed. I think then Under 10 Flags can't. Regardless, I'll tell you that I've already covered the Type 21 here, the Naval Wonder Weapon. I already did a couple videos on that. Fantastic game. Really like that one. And now we're going to look at First Strike. So let's go ahead and take a look. Again, First Strike. This one is designed by Paul, and my apologies, Paul Rohrbaugh? Paul Rohrbaugh. I'm sure I'll be corrected, and I hope I will be, because I like to get his name right. So I know he has quite a few designs under his belt. I think I've only played maybe a couple of his that I can think of, but let's go ahead and dive into this one. So I'm not going to do a full tutorial. I probably could, but I'm not going to. I just want to show the game off, kind of do an overview, and then I'll go into my final thoughts here. So, like I said, this is First Strike. It's the Cuxhaven Raid of Christmas Day of 1914. So this is a raid, one of the first launched from aircraft carriers way back, obviously World War I. Very kind of primitive technology, at least as far as aircraft were concerned, aircraft carriers. But at the same time, this game gets to you get to participate that a little bit, right? It gets to show that off. So the setup is that you are the British, and you are launching this raid against the Germans. I have the map here. The map is just one single sheet. So whatever the 8x11, whatever, the normal sheet of paper is, that's the size of this map. I think on the magazine it says it was a bigger map. It actually comes in just this like single page size. And this has all the different spaces you need for the game. There's no other display sheets, anything like that. I mean, you're going to have a bunch of counters. You have counters in a draw pool. You have some counters off the board here. But otherwise, everything is set up on the board. So what you have your aircraft carriers represented up top here, along with 9 different aircraft. And you have a sort of strategic map, and then a raid map, and then the naval battle board. Just kind of run through things, like I said, quick, kind of do a little overview for you guys, okay? So you start off the game. This is the initial setup. So I have the aircraft assigned. You can do it randomly, you can do it however you want, or you can do it according to historically, which is actually printed on the map, which I really like, printed on the board. So I have it set up historically. I think that's the easiest to keep track of your bombs as well. So what happens? And this game, so I'm going to tell you, it's a solitaire game, single player game. It has a very strong narrative driven game vibe. No, you're not a specific pilot or captain. You're not Harwich. You are just sort of representing these different forces, but there's a vibe to it of narrative driven, and you'll kind of see that as I show it off here. So you'll see what I mean, and I'll explain it as well. So your goal here, right? You have your aircraft. Here's your force on this strategic map. In the raid maps, you're going to have your force, which is the aircraft carriers, which I also have the actual ships. So here's the aircraft themselves on each carrier. The Empress, Engadine, and Riviera. Here are counters representing those aircraft carriers, along with the force that's part of the Harwich force. You have the British Fleet Reserve, German Fleet Reserve. Nobody out there yet. There's fog present to start the game. As you're able to move turn to turn, and you move your force, you follow the boxes, you move it to point B here. You're going to go ahead and launch your aircraft onto the raid map. They're going to launch directly from your aircraft carriers. There's going to be like a chance that they'll launch or not. They're going to end up on one of these random positions here, and then you're going to go ahead and you get to move them, turn by turn, move them closer, and then depending on altitude, they're going to start off either high, medium, or low altitude. You can adjust altitude as the turns go by, but the more turns you spend wasting doing that, it's going to take more turns on the record track, so you actually keep track of it separately. There's regular turns overall, and then there's the air raid turns. Keep track of them separately. You take longer turns, which will reduce your victory points you get, as well as you'll have more opportunity for the anti-aircraft guns to take your guys out, take your aircraft out. So you get close, you're going to drop your bombs, you're going to roll a lot of dice, you're going to hope that you get a bomb off, and then you're going to go ahead and escape. At that point, you're going to kind of move off the raid map here. You'll be done with the raid map. You're going to move back over to the strategic map. From there, you're going to get picked up. Hopefully you'll land. If your aircraft is damaged, you may end up in what's this rescue space here. You have a British submarine, the E-11, but at the same time, you're going to start drawing from this cup. So as this stuff's going on, as turns go by, you're drawing from this cup. And this cup is going to have all the German forces. So you're going to be drawing things like, oh, I don't know, Zeppelins, German fighters, German warships that go in the fleet reserve. You're going to draw, and then there's a U-boat. I can't find the counter right now. It's going to show it off, but you get the idea, right? So you're drawing these different counters. They're getting placed according to the rules, right? It's a certain, U-boat may be placed here, maybe placed there. You never know. You're going to roll to determine. And then you're going to have, you're going to be under attack, right? So your aircraft are going to be under attack here in the raid map as they finish up and they're rescued, and you're moving your force. You're trying to get off the map, right? You're trying to make it to the British Fleet Reserve. You're going to come under attack. The Germans, and they're going to build up. They're start at nothing. They're going to build up quite a few warships. They may sortie and come after you. You may have to worry about U-boats torpedoing your boats. You may have to worry about them torpedoing your carriers. I just played a game where I lost 2 out of my 3 carriers to U-boat action, to being torpedoed. So you're going to constantly face challenges. That's all going to be built around this draw cup. You make it to the end. You're going to go ahead and make it out of here to the British Fleet Reserve. The game ends immediately. You then tally up all the victory points and determine if you won and by how much. So game, like I said, I'm not, I didn't cover every little aspect. I'm not going to cover every little roll, this and that. The rules are clear enough. I had a couple questions. The designer was able to answer those. There's a strict sequence of play in the book, and that sort of guides you through it. And the game is very simple as you go through. Just go through step by step, and it runs you through an entire game. Once you've played one, you basically can go back. You can play it again because it's very replayable with the different options. You're going to be able to play through it a couple times a lot faster, and you're going to be able to see and experience different things. Between the dice rolling and drawing from the cup, every game is going to play out differently. Same idea. You approach, you launch your raid, your air raid, you conduct your air raid, and you try to make your escape. Same general idea, but it will basically come out differently each time. Now let's go ahead and jump into my final review thoughts. Alright guys, so this is definitely shorter than some of my videos because like I said, I'm not doing a full tutorial. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to kind of show the game off, and I wanted you guys to take a look and see, hey, is this the type of solitaire game I would enjoy? So let me tell you right now, I do like it. I like it a lot. How it seems like a narrative driven, because I mentioned that before. And when I say narrative driven, hopefully you guys understand what I mean. I'll kind of explain what I mean is a game like The Hunters, game like Interceptor Ace. Now again, there's not a sheet for you to fill out and, this is the name of my captain or this is the name of my pilot. It's not like that. Although I feel like that almost could have been part of it if this wasn't just a magazine game, right? If it was a full game by itself. So how it works is it's a very strict sequence of play, and it's a very extensive sequence of play. It's basically a full page and a half. Well, I guess it's not technically a full page. It's more of 3/4 of a page. So it's a full left side and then onto the top right there. So, but it's what it is. It's a very strict sequence of play you're running through, and you're doing a lot of dice rolling. Now that, like a narrative game, there's a lot of dice rolling, and there's decisions to be made, but you're not making every decision that happens, right? It's not absolutely, okay, yep, my aircraft are going to launch. I'm going to come in high altitude here and move and swoop in low here and, whatever. Well, you're going to roll things. You're going to roll to see if you successfully launch, which, let's be honest, this is World War I. So historically, I believe out of these 9, 2 of them didn't launch. Only 7 actually got launched. So there you go. 2 had engine failure. You're going to roll for that. Then when you get there, you're going to roll to see where you are. You're going to roll for your altitude. You don't get to pick. You don't have to come in and say, yep, my guys are all coming in low right away. No, you have to roll for your altitude. You come in, you'll have your combat, you'll get shot at by the anti-aircraft, you'll go ahead and drop your bombs. Now, again, it feels like that narrative-driven style where you've made your decisions, you've made some of your decisions, but there's also going to be some dice rolling that kind of determines, and you're along for the ride. And I know when I say that, some people go, oh, I don't like that. Okay, those are probably the same people that don't like the Hunters, that don't like Interceptor Ace, right? They don't like games where a part of it, and not all of it, but a part of it is determined by dice rolling. They don't like that. They want to have complete godlike control. Well, this isn't that game, right? This is a game where there's going to be dice rolling. And I don't just mean randomness. I mean there's dice rolling that just kind of determines what happens. It's not always success or failure. It's things like I said, a very simple example, the aircraft, when they come in high, medium, or low altitude. You don't get to pick it. The game does. There's not a success or failure with that because you just adjust. Because say when you're at low altitude, you have a better chance to bomb, but anti-aircraft has an easier time hitting you. You come in at high altitude, okay, yep, the anti-aircraft is a lot harder to hit you, but you also have a lot less chance of one of your bombs actually impacting where it needs to. The airplane factory, airship building yard, etc. Those are choices you can make because you can change stuff later. So what I mean by that is you roll your altitude, or you come in at a certain altitude. Well, then you can adjust it. But then you're making you're doing that whole, okay, I can say, all right, I want my guy to drop down to medium and then low altitude when he comes in, but you're now spending more turns, more rounds over target, over the raid map, which is going to hurt you as you're drawing more for the Germans, and it's going to hurt you in victory points. Everything's a trade-off, right? So you're balancing what the game gives you versus what you want to make, what kind of risk you want to take, right? The risk-reward factor. There may not be any modifiers to die rolls, like a whole lot of extra modifiers, other than things like that, right? Things where you maybe determine your altitude. Okay, so then you get off the raid map, you're going to escaping through a strategic map, and, the Germans probably going to sortie. German fleet's probably going to sortie after you. You're going to be drawn. You may get some U-boats. You may not. You may get Zeppelins. You may not. It always just depends on kind of what you're drawing. So there's a big random factor to that. But again, it makes me think of those narrative-driven games where, you're usually rolling on a chart, right? You're rolling on a charter table. Do I encounter enemy fighters? Do I encounter enemy submarines? Do I encounter merchant ships, et cetera, right? This has that vibe, just without the actual, these are my pilots, these are their names, I'm keeping track of their, because you're not running multiple missions or sorties, of course. This was one event, right? You launch, you drop your bombs, you escape and try to get out of there. So, game is fairly simple. Obviously, you can see it's on one sheet of paper. I've talked about what I really like about it. I've talked about some of the aspects of it, how it just feels like a narrative-driven. Again, it's not described as that. That's just kind of me. That's what Wayne says. I feel like it's kind of a narrative-driven in some aspects. Very strict sequence of play. As a solitaire player, you run through it, kind of go through, and when you're done, you're done rolling, you go through. That's it. You make some choices along the way. You get to impact some areas. You get to kind of take some risks, but at the same time, a lot of it is up to the dice rolling, how you roll, where things happen, and then what you draw here from the cup. I really like the game. Like I said, a couple things I'd probably do different, or I would like to see. The map is a little small. Everything is on here, as you can see, but there's just some things where it's like, for instance, when you start conducting your raid, what's going to happen is, so you're going to have your aircraft, right? You're going to be moving them, and you're going to have them here. And let's just quick little show you. Okay, so you're moving your guys. Okay, cool, no problem. Well, you're actually going to have a couple, okay? And then each one is also going to have an altitude marker, unless it's medium altitude. Maybe you have low here. He's low. He's high. Okay, so we'll mark them here. You see what I'm already starting now. Yes, I'm showing for video, and I'm kind of playing it up a little bit. But you see you start, okay, fine, just a little stack of 4. Now you start moving in. And then you start, okay, we might get hit by AA fire. He can't hit me there because it's follow the arrows, but let's just say, right, I got hit. Oh, okay, now I gotta find now I gotta flip them over. Oops, I don't want to mess the other one up too. Flip them over to the, it's like reduced side here. Okay, I'm back here. And then as you have your stack, you start dropping bombs. Oops, I messed that up. Start dropping bombs, and you might say, okay, I got a hit. All right, I got a hit here, and I successfully rolled it. Well, now you set it. Now you may want to set next to it. You try to set it. I was starting to set them under. But then again, so you're messing with the stack. The stack starts getting a little crazy. Now you can set them next to it. You might say, well, just leave your Wayne, just leave your aircraft in one stack. Go ahead and put your hit markers next to it. Fair enough, you can. there's just enough room for that, sort of. You kind of got to start going out, and this is where I say, like, I would like to see the map bigger. The rule book or the magazine mentions the map being a little bigger. I can't remember the exact size, but just bigger than this one sheet of paper. And that may have been nice. Maybe make each of these squares four, like the equivalent of four of these squares, or even just two of them, more of a rectangle. So you could actually keep aircraft and hit markers. Or say you go on this one. Look at this. There's ship shed where there is anti-aircraft. You have anti-aircraft. You have your guys. Maybe you're dropping bombs. So now look, you have three different types of counters. You have your aircraft, you have their altitudes, you have these, you have all kinds of counters in one little square. It starts getting a little complicated, especially when you have all of your aircraft on here and you're trying to conduct everything. So that gets a little complicated. Not complicated, but a little messy, right? A little fiddly. Same thing when you get out here onto the strategic map. It can get a little fiddly. Specifically, you start, say, you have the U-boats attack you. Well, for instance, right now, you see these guys, right? My aircraft and everything. This was a Harwich force, which is represented by one counter. Cool, right? Nice and easy, one counter. Well, the problem is there's no holding box for them. So where do you want to put them? You can put them off the map. You can put them on the map here in the corner. You can put them over here covering up the cool logo and the name of the game. Maybe a holding box would have been nice. A big enough holding box. Same thing with the British Fleet Reserve. Look at all these ships. They're crammed. I got them all piled up on top of each other because they're all crammed in here. And what's going to happen is, say, U-boats or Zeppelins are attacking. You have to roll to determine randomly who they attack. Well, you gotta line them up. The game says, hey, line up your counters. Again, not the end of the world, but it is something to be aware of, that it feels a little cramped. If you don't mind that, and in fact, kind of a plus, or it is a plus, if you want a game with small footprint, this is it. I mean, you just need this, right? I mean, you have a cup, you're gonna have some extra counters off the map. You don't want somewhere to roll your dice, sure. But in reality, this takes up a tiny footprint, very small footprint. So that is a plus. Unless you start looking at the way some of the counters start piling up, because there's quite a few counters for this small map. That's probably the one downside, is just the fact that it gets a little fiddly. But other than that, I mean, it's a lot of fun. Narrative driven, sort of. My term, not theirs, or at least my term to describe. That's, as a reviewer, that's my right. I call it a little narrative driven. But other than that, fun little solitaire game. And as it comes in this, I definitely, now that I've played both solitaire games, and I've played them quite a bit, I have to say that this Against the Odds magazine, the annual 2018 Sea Monsters, definitely worth your money. And you still have two other games, right? One of them I think is more of a hidden stuff, so maybe it's not for solitaire gamers at all. But the third one, I believe it's Iron and Fire. I think I read online some people soloing it. So between these, the two dedicated solo ones and that one, that magazine is definitely worth picking up if you have any interest in like naval battles, sea stuff, just this sort of the, off the beaten path a little bit, right? It's not so much just ships, lying next to each other firing salvos. Instead, it's, different types of games. This one's worth checking out. First Strike, Cuxhaven Raid. Good job, guys. Good job, Paul. Let me know how to pronounce your name. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hey, you know the deal. Thumbs up. Give me a subscription. I'm just about at 1,000 subscribers. Thanks for picking up. Channel's looking great. Loving all these games. Let's go ahead and see what else we got coming in the future. So, till next time, guys. Later.